Let me find it. Good morning. Welcome to my Good Life meditation. My name is Kurt, and here we go. There we go. Gotta get my notes on the right page. And this is my daily Good Life meditation. This is an exercise that I do every morning at 6 a.m. to remember my life objectives and principles, those which are outlined in my book, Going Alone. I also use the time to think about yesterday and how I did with any challenges or opportunities that I met where I had either a good engagement or didn't, and trying to find out what was it about the good engagement that worked well and what was it about the poor engagement that I could do better. I go over the 8 objectives of my creed and review one of the principles, and then I prepare for the coming day. But before that, let me welcome new subscribers to the channel. Disclaimer, I do talk about sensitive subjects here, such as death. And also a big thank you to my supporters, my viewers on YouTube, my members on YouTube, and my Patreon supporters. It's your support that makes it possible for me to have the adventures that I have. Will be having an adventure this week as well. I'll be going down to Osaka in I think Thursday it is. Yeah, maybe Thursday. And maybe I'll slip in an adventure to go look at another Akia house this week. But with that, let's get started. And I do read and respond to comments, but I wait until the end. Let me get a sip of my tea. I just poured another cup of Japanese green tea. Isn't that great? Shizuoka green tea. Oh, that color. I love it. I really need it. I'm feeling a little weak right now, so I'll get to that in just a second. Another sip. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is go over my notes from yesterday and speak to a few points. So this is a journal video. I talk about the last 24 hours primarily. And what I'm after is not a blow-by-blow account of what happened yesterday, but what was an engaging moment where I had the chance to do well or do poorly, like I said before. So yesterday, in the last 24 hours note, I just have 2 notes here. The first note is hit a wall, and then in parentheses it says handled well. And then in the second note says ready to die. Remember I said I talk about sensitive subjects. So here's the incident as it occurred. There's only one really big thing that happened yesterday, and I'll be able to cover both of those by just describing that. So I'm 61 years old. I've always been very active, and I get up very early every morning. I always have. I'm up at 4 a.m. every morning. I don't need an alarm, just I'm up. And I go to bed correspondingly pretty early before, I'm usually in bed by 9 p.m. In the summertime, I'm often going to bed while the sun's still out. And between 4 a.m. and 9 p.m., I very much fill the day with activity. I rarely sit down. I'm standing right now. I have a standing desk. I just go. But I think I mentioned before that beginning about age 57, my body has begun to change. I've become weaker. My energy level has decreased. My cognitive abilities are beginning to decline noticeably. My vision is starting to go. My overall general body and muscle tone is also decreasing. This is one of the reasons that I was so motivated to pull the trigger and retire at age 60, was because I feel this whole bodily apparatus getting old, and I know that's inexorable. Right? That is the way that this will happen. The best that I can do is to keep a good, healthy lifestyle and good exercise regime, and do strength training. That's one of the reasons you see in my clips often. I'm out there lifting rocks, doing push-ups. I pepper my day. Every time I'm just walking along on the road and I see a wall, I'll just pull over and do push-ups, and I do sit-ups. That's why I have this flat spot right there in my room. It's where I can do impromptu sit-ups. So I'm working at it, and I really eat an excellent diet, and I almost drink almost no alcohol. I don't smoke. I take very good care of myself, and I eat an excellent meal. I eat excellent diet with my wife's wonderful cooking. Nevertheless, I'm on my way out. You know, whether it's going to be another, 5 years, 10 years, or 20, I don't know, but the decline has begun in earnest, and I'm not complaining. I've had a good, healthy life, so and it's to be expected, right? That this will begin to happen. Now, one of the things that's starting to happen is that my body is pushing back when I try too much. And that's what happened yesterday. In the morning, I got up and it was raining hard. And I took off every morning I walk. Like I said, I get up at 4 a.m. and I walk up to Hirasawa, which is a temple about a mile away up in the mountains. I climb the stairs to the top, and then I turn around and come back. And I have noticed that the amount of, and I walk a lot. I mean, and I've been walking a lot for years. So walking is nothing new. I mean, I walk so much. I've been walking so much for years and years and years. But I've noticed that there's a sweet spot for how much I can walk in the morning. And if I violate that sweet spot, either too much or too little, I pay a price. If I don't walk enough in the morning, my overall fitness level starts to go down. I start to put on a little bit of weight. I don't feel as good. If I walk too much, I get tired in the afternoon. If I really walk too much, my body midday throws up its hands and says, "That's it. We're done here. You're finished for the day, Kurt." And that's what happened yesterday. I really enjoy walking in the rain. It's really fun. I have a special pair of shoes that don't require socks. They're kind of like Crocs without the holes, and which I prefer because they don't get rocks in them. And so yesterday I had those socks on, and I did bring an umbrella, but after a while I just collapsed the umbrella and I just got all wet. I had a wonderful walk, like I said, up to the temple, and then here's where I made a mistake. On the way back, I decided to make a detour up into the foothills on the north side of the valley, and then I made another detour after that, and I kept going on these little detours, plodding along through the wet paths. If you see my Retiring in Japan video upload that I'll be uploading this morning, it'll go live on YouTube at 4 p.m. Japan time this afternoon. It's a premiere. You'll see the whole thing, or at least the parts that I filmed. That video has a long intro part because I was plodding around in the muck and the rain for a long time. I forgot that I can't do that anymore, or that I can't do it without a consequence. And the consequence did come in the afternoon. I was downtown with my wife. We were at a department store, and I all of a sudden started to feel dizzy. We were on the escalator, and I had to reach out and hold on to my wife's shoulder to steady myself. And I told her, I think I'm getting dizzy. I might fall down. And she took me over to where the elevators were. There were some seats there, and I sat down, and she went into a vending machine and got me 2 bottles of water. And here's where, okay, remember, this Good Life meditation is not me telling you about the day. There's a purpose in this, and it's not to just tell about the day. The purpose is to find out, how did I respond to that situation? Did I respond well to it? And so here's the important part of it. I was on the escalator when it happened. We were going down the escalator. My wife was by my side. I could feel the lightheadedness come on, the swirling, and I knew what was happening. That I had overdone it. I had hiked too much in the morning. The temperature was a little hot yesterday. The humidity was high, and my body was saying, "No, you'd had enough." So I put my hand on my wife's shoulder and I said, "I'm dizzy. I think I might fall down. I need to sit down." I was giving her a heads up just in case it did happen. I didn't really think I was necessarily going to fall down, but I just want to, I want to communicate to my partner that this is happening and I need your help. So that was the first thing that I did that was good, was that I communicated. This is hashtag the social principle. The social principle suggests that we need our social connections and we need to maintain good and solid connections and good communication so that we can be there for one another when we need each other. So I literally leaned on my wife for steadiness, and I communicated to her clearly, unambiguously what was happening, so that if something was to happen, she knows what happened. I mean, the same thing happened to my dad. That's how my dad died. He just fell over all of a sudden and died. I mean, I don't mean to laugh, but I mean, it's a serious thing. So my wife took me over to like I said, to the bank of benches by the elevator. She sat me down. Yumiko has a very cool head. She says, she said, you need some water. It's a hot day, the dehydration. She said, I knew this was going to happen to you, Kurt. So she went to a vending machine and she got the water. Now, here's where the interesting part is. Like I said, this is not story time with Kurt. This is what was hard about yesterday and how did I respond? Now, I was sitting there alone on the bench, and I sat in the middle of the bench just in case I happened to fall over. I would fall on either side of the bench and not, topple off onto the floor, because I really did think for a moment there that I might fall down. I sat there. I knew Yumiko knew where I was. She was off getting some water, and I had my feet firm on the ground. And I closed my eyes, and here's the part that was the interesting part. I rallied my reason. First I rallied temperance, hashtag temperance, which was one of the principles in the book. The ability to control one's emotional reactions, and then rally hashtag reason on top of that to exercise self-control when self-control is needed. First, I used temperance. Well, the first thing I used was the social principle to communicate to my wife that I needed help, which she then engendered and brought that about. Then I rallied temperance to control my emotions in the moment. I closed my eyes to diminish the amount of input coming in, to just focus on what was going on in my body. And then I used reason to think things out, because I had a little bit of free time in my head, and I thought things out. And the first thought that came to mind was, how do you feel about this, Kurt? I mean, here you are. You talk big talk every day about being ready to die. Your father died in a very similar manner from a heart attack. You don't know what this is. This could be dehydration, Kurt, but this could be a stroke that's happening. It could be something else. How are you feeling in this moment, Kurt? And my mind, the deeper mind inside was, I'm ready. And the other thought that went through my mind was, if this is it, I'll fall to the left because there's nothing to the left, just a nice soft thing, and I won't even open my eyes. I won't even open my eyes for one last look at life, because I don't have any cards left on the table. I'm ready to go. If yesterday had been the day, I'm ready to go. My wife is taken care of for life financially. My daughter, her education is complete. She's on her own. She's taking care of herself. My book is written. I've lived a determined, willful life all of my days, and I don't have anybody that I have sour relationship with at this point. I can go at any moment. So, in summary, then, the two notes for yesterday was hit the wall. I hit a wall yesterday. But then I put in parentheses. This is why it's really interesting sometimes to really take the notes in the moment, right? Because it's the parenthetical observations that are the interesting ones. I hit a wall, which was an understatement because it was scary. But then in parentheses, handled well. Because of hashtag social principle, hashtag temperance, hashtag reason. And then hashtag, of course, always ready to die. And I think it was because, and that was the second note here, because it was later in the afternoon, I was thinking about it. I think it's because I'm ready to die that there was no need to get upset. There was no need to blow things out of proportion. There was no need to lament or worry or fret. but just to sit there and settle through the moment, which my wife, she came back. She brought 2 bottles of water, and we sat side by side while I drank the first bottle, let that sit in, drank the second bottle, and within, by that time, it had been about a half hour of sitting on the bench. I realized that I was regaining my footing. My dizziness was gone, mostly. And we went back to the car where Yumiko drove us home, and I spent the rest of the day basically here. I laid down on the sofa while Yumiko made dinner. And then what happened was later was we went out for, here's another extension of it. I forgot to make a note for this. We went for our evening dog walk. And Yumiko and her sister walk Ollie, the black dog, and I walk Rudy. It's just the way we usually stick together, but there's this one road that we get on. It's called Minami Kansen. It's just down here. Actually, it's not even Minami. It was one up from Minami Kansen. And the name isn't important. Anyway, Rudy, for some reason, always wants to cross the street and walk on the other side. There is a sidewalk. So I would get to the crosswalk. Rudy and I went across the street. Yumiko and Yoko are on the other side up ahead, and I'm back behind because Rudy's a slower walker, walking with Rudy. And suddenly I could just begin to not feel good again. I stopped. Hashtag temperance, controlling my emotions. Hashtag reason. And I said, okay, Kurt, you've reached your limit. You know, you're clearly you're not back on your feet again. I got my phone, opened my phone, and texted my wife. I said, well, first I tried to call her, but she didn't pick up because she was talking to her sister and she didn't hear the phone. So I just texted her and I said, I'm getting a little tired. Rudy and I are heading back. And I turned around and went back. She texted me, and I think she and Yoko, cut their one short, and she came back to check on me. And then I took a bath and went to bed. And I feel good now. And now this morning when I went out for my walk, instead of the full 1 mile, it's 1 mile up to the temple, I went half a mile and then turned around and came back again, just to exercise the self-control necessary, maybe to stay in good shape and to not have a repeat of yesterday. So that's the notes from yesterday. That was a very interesting experience, and it was the second time in about 2 months that I've had the opportunity to test the readiness for death thing. And it's good because it's easy to talk it up, to sit here on my phone in the morning holding it, talking to you and say, I'm ready for death. It's another thing when what looks like could be death comes peeking around the corner, and we see how we handle it then. Okay, so let's now go, speaking of the creed, let's go over the 8 objectives of the creed and 1 principle. So my life at this point, for those of you who are new subscribers, and there sure are a lot of you, welcome. And by the way, if you are a new subscriber and you're watching this and you're going, what the heck is this guy doing? This isn't Japan. Well, that is Japan behind me. That's a rice field. Soon it'll be flooded and there'll be frogs there. And that's a Japanese bamboo forest. And there was something big. I was sitting here this morning, early after I got back from the walk, and there's something big crunching around in the bamboo forest down there. I think it might have been a tanuki or two. Not sure. Anyway, you're wondering, what am I doing? Well, I'm an author, among other things, and I wrote several books, and this is my life's work, going alone. In this book, I tell the story of my adult lifelong effort to reconcile what the hell this is all about. What is this? Where did I find myself? Suddenly alive and living in this. What is this? I was religious for a while in my teenage years, and then I stopped being religious, and then I was left on my own, and I had to sort it all out. And I embarked at age 16 on trying to figure out what the hell where I am and what I am doing, and how to make best use of the time. This book is the result of that effort. That going alone speaks to the effort of going out into with life and into the wilderness, literally, to face down the emptiness that appears to pervade the universe. And then what is made of that and what we do as a result. Now, what I did as a result was I realized that, if I'm alone in the universe, what I mean by alone is I've got my family, my wife, my kid, my dogs, but if there is no overarching support, like I don't believe in God. Remember I told you I'd talk about sensitive subjects here. I'm an atheist. Since I don't believe in God, and I don't believe that there's any afterlife, I don't have a soul, and there's nobody to guide or protect me or show me the way, then it's up to me to figure out how to make how to define what makes a purposeful life, and then it's up to me to live that purposeful life. And that's my guidebook. I wrote that for myself to figure out what I'm going to do with my life so that I can be prepared to die and not feel like I as Thoreau would say, as I'm very wanton to often quote Thoreau. Thoreau once wrote, when he was asked about why he wrote Walden, he said, I wrote Walden, I wrote what was within these pages so that not when I come to the end of my life to discover that I had not lived at all. I tried to emulate that. Anyway, there's a creed in here. And the creed consists of 8 objectives and 35 principles. The objectives are what I'm trying to do in life. The 35 principles are the tools that I use to get me there. Earlier I was reciting hashtag temperance, hashtag reason, hashtag social principle. These are the principles. Whenever I say hashtag something, I'm hearkening back to one of the principles or objectives. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to relate the 8 objectives and one of the principles, which I do every day. This is my effort so that I keep these things current in my mind so that I know what the heck I'm doing, what I plan to do with this day. And what I plan to do is try to abide the following 8 objectives. Number 1 is and they are ranked in terms of importance to me. Number 1, and the most important thing in my life, is to make sure that I'm ready to die. Well, Kurt, that sounds awfully self-centered, right? You're just focusing on yourself. No, it's more than that, because if I'm ready to die, that means I'm actively attending to everything that's important to me. Making sure that my wife is going to be all right when I'm gone. Making sure that my daughter is grown and able to take care of herself. Making sure that my relationships are sound. And making sure that whatever is important to me that I wanted to do in this brief life that I've got, that I've either got it done or that it's in a state of readiness. If it's a progress underway, that it's in a state of readiness, that my papers are in order, so to speak, right? So that's the first one, to be always ready to die. And I've talked already a lot about that one, and I am ready to die. And I got tested on it yesterday, pop quiz at the department store, and I think I passed. Gulp, because you never know. You never know. It's incremental, right? I mean, will I feel that way, as it's really happening? I guess all I can do is prepare. You don't know if the chute will open until you jump out of the plane, right? Okay, number 2 is to make good and effective use of my time. That's why I get up at 4 a.m. because I can squeeze so much vital living in before breakfast if I do, and I already have. I've walked several miles already. I've responded to lots of comments. I've written in my journal. I've had a good, nice sit with my dog, and my wife's not even up yet. So yeah, make good and effective use of my time. Did you notice there's 2 words there? Good and effective use of my time, right? Good means that, I feel good about what I did. Effective means that if I had some purpose in that activity, that it was to good utility. It actually did something, right? It's not a matter of just sitting here, thinking good thoughts. They need to be thoughts that then yield actions that are tangible and appreciable towards the ends that I want to achieve. 3 is to develop and maintain good and sound life principles. Now, I've been doing this daily exercise that I call the Good Life Meditation since December 2018. So I'm going on 7 years of daily activity. And the reason I do this is specifically to answer that 3rd objective, which is to develop and maintain good and sound life principles. When I wrote Going Alone and I codified the creed, I realized that it's not enough just to write the creed down. I need to live it. To live it, I need to think about it every day, and I need to tinker with it. I started off with 8 objectives and principles. Now I've got 35 plus 8, which is that 43, right? Because they've grown over time because of this daily activity. Number 4 is to cultivate good emotional reactions. This is probably the most actively engaged of my objectives because I'm doing it throughout the day, constantly encountering situations where I'm aiming for this direction and life sends me this direction, and my visceral response may be to get upset or angry or to disappointed. But if I can keep that regulated by managing how I'm responding, it doesn't mean I'm suppressing the emotions necessarily, although in fact I am. I don't abide the idea that if you push your emotion down that it'll blow up somewhere else. What I do is I hold my emotion down. I make a note about it and I think about it later, like now, and that helps me to then express it in some way. A year ago when I was doing these exercises, you would have seen me doing things because I was in the heat of the career then, and I was always writing stuff down that was like, oh, I was in this meeting and the manager said thus and thus, and it really pissed me off, and and I would write it down that it really pissed me off, and then I'd ask myself, well, how did I handle it, right? did I handle it well? Did I not? I don't get to do that as much anymore because I'm not in that stressful situation. So that's number 4, good emotional reactions, really a key one. Number 5 is the performance of good actions, making sure that I'm sprinkling of what I define as virtue throughout the course of the day, where I define virtue as decisions and actions that result in the improvement of the well-being of thinking creatures. Very broad and general, but basically it means reducing suffering and improving peace and happiness in a reasonable manner. Number 6 is to recognize my true limits and true opportunities. This is a really important one for me, especially now that I'm 61 years old and my limits are increasing as my opportunities are decreasing, at least my physical ones, right? As I said at the start of this video, my body is definitely declining. My mind is definitely declining fast. Both of them are going fast. It's good that I've got my creative work done because I can't do that stuff. I couldn't write this book now. My mind isn't sharp enough anymore. Knowing these limits causes me to then attend to where the opportunities in fact are. And where the opportunities are is a life of peace and more sedate activities than that. But that's not necessary to go into those things. I just want to point out that this objective, knowing my limits, knowing my opportunity, where the opportunities are, is a key element in living a more fruitful life in accordance with my true capabilities, both body and mind. Number 7 is to do just one thing at a time. Do that thing slowly and deliberately and carefully. Very hard objective to maintain when life is calling us in so many different directions. As a project manager, I would typically run 3 projects at once, as in addition to doing all kinds of other things. I did that for decades. And it's hard not to not multitask when you're running 3 projects at the same time. That was good practice for learning how to do it. It's dirt simple now. The last objective is the one I call balance. Balance speaks to and balance is really the result and consequence of attending to the 7 other objectives. If I can do the other 8 things, I tend to be in balance. If I have good emotional reactions, I know what my limits are, I know where my opportunities are, and I'm ready for death, then it's hard for life to push me over one way or the other, very hard, or at least not that I care very much if life pushes me over. Like if death had come yesterday, I would have fallen over onto the chair. I think I could have done it in a way and kept my balance even though I was falling over onto the floor, if you know what I mean. There you go, that's the 8 objectives. Let's read one principle from the book. I didn't read a principle yesterday because I was out. I made yesterday's video, I was out hiking, so I didn't have the book with me. What's next? You can find the objectives and principles in Going Alone if you look for the chapter titled The Good Life. It's near the back. Okay, not the pirate ride, we talked about that. Did we talk about that one? Principle of purpose, dissolution and emergence. I'm a little lost on it. I think I did talk about that one already. Okay, I think the next one is the principle of family. And the sub-principle catalyst, although I may have talked about this one already. Here, let's just give it a try. Our people make up the context of our lives in terms of purpose, obligation, mission, feedback, support, and ultimately the best and almost intangible part of being alive. It really is almost intangible. I can't describe, when I was 24 and I had made the decision to be a family man, and I really was a active decision. There was literally, I can remember the moment that I made the choice. Am I going to go down the road of being a single man and have adventures and live alone and do whatever I want, or am I going to choose to? I'd been dating Yumiko for about a year then. Or am I going to make a decision to spend my life with this woman that I met, who's a wonderful woman, build a family and a career and take on all the obligations of that? At that point, I didn't know what the fruits were, except for I had a rough idea that if you become a family man, there's lots of responsibility and sacrifice, and that maybe you get the piece of something at the end, like leaving a legacy behind or something like that. I didn't really know how deep that was. Now I'm on the other side of that. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like this whole infrastructure of connection and depth and meaning and fulfillment comes of the family path that no one ever really articulated very well for me when and I didn't see it in my own family because my own family was a mess. So I wrote this with that in mind when I said that. Let me read that again, that first sentence, because that first sentence kind of, for me, nails it. I'm reading it again for myself because I'm reminding myself. Our people make up the context of our lives, yes, in terms of purpose, obligation, mission, feedback, support, and ultimately the best and almost intangible part of being alive. It really is the best part. When I was 23 or 24, I would say that if I can live a worthwhile life and write a book about it, that would be the best thing in my life. No, the best thing in my life was being a good dad and seeing my daughter and being there for her. Like this morning, she was sick over the weekend, she was supposed to go down to Okinawa. She works for a big travel agency here in Japan, and she's learning to be a travel agent and all that kind of stuff. And she was supposed to go down to Okinawa and couldn't go because she wasn't feeling good on Thursday and Friday. She had to take a couple of days off, and someone else went in her place. And she was texting me yesterday and saying, Dad, I'm kind of feeling bad about going in. I don't want to go into work on Monday because I feel bad because I, imposed on my coworkers. And I wrote to her and I said, that's what these days are for. This happens to us, and you'll have the opportunity to do the same for them, in the future. That's a guarantee. Being able to do that and to see my daughter grown and reinforcing her and to be there for her, it's more important than this in the deep visceral sense. Continuing. We begin with the people to whom we are born, the chance family which we gain by accident or birth. So you start off with the family that you didn't decide, the family that made you. We grow then with the family we later decide, our friends and our partners and our spouse and the children we in turn together make. So we start off with the family that we're born into, then we get to make our own family. Like one wise person once said, we get two chances at a happy childhood. The first is when we were children, and there's a Suzume Bachi right there. The second, stay away. The second is when we get a chance to be parents and to give someone else a happy childhood. From these we gain our decided mission and our direction and our guidance forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, till death or very good cause do us part. Without this connection and circumstance, we can still live a rich and meaningful life, though the way may be harder at times as we strive with less mandate. This is important. We strive with less mandate. The mandate is really key to this. Putting on the ring and deciding to build a life with somebody, And then especially having a childhood and then deciding that we're going to give a good life to that child is a mandate that sees us through. It's like the determination of a soldier about to climb up over the rampart and go into a worthwhile battle, if such a thing exists. It's the courage and the strength and the impetus and the fortitude to do these things that are very hard, like spending 20 years at a job that you really hate because you know that it yields good benefit and result, not only to those that count on us, like our family, but also to the community at large. I mean, I hated being a project manager, but I did really, really good things as a project manager. I worked in the public sector. I made projects that helped vulnerable children get resources. I mean, I literally I helped to develop software that brought children out of dangerous situations, gave them beds to sleep in, and helped them to find foster homes to stay in. I mean, it's really good stuff, but I hated the job, I hated the work, but I loved the job. You get what I mean? And I wouldn't have done that if I didn't have a family, because I didn't have a choice, right? So that's the mandate part. So without this connection, continuing and circumstance, we can still live a rich and meaningful life, though the way may be harder at times as we strive with less mandate, catalyst perhaps, and that's the sub-principle of the principle of family. The sub-principle, all of my principles typically have one or two sub-principles. The sub-principle is catalyst, because family is the catalyst that causes us to do the really hard things, like abiding and towing the line when we don't want to, like seeing the way through, completing projects. Like I was watching my daughter do it now, as she's telling me and texting yesterday, saying, "I really don't want to go to work tomorrow, Dad, but sweetie, you've got a commitment, you know. This is worthwhile stuff, and this is good practice for her when she becomes a wife and a mother, when she'll need that fortitude to see her through to do the really hard things." I saw that yesterday. I saw something yesterday that really touched me. It's a little bit of an aside. Okay, Yumiko and I were walking the dogs up at the big park here, and there was a dad, you know, handsome-looking young, of course, Japanese family. You know, he looks like he's 38. Looks like a salaryman type of kind of a guy, but looks kind of like an athlete. And he was playing soccer with his two sons. One son was probably 9. The other son was probably 5, 6, maybe, something like that. Still a baby. And they were kicking the ball. The dad was over here, and the two sons were over here. And Mimiko and I were walking slowly, and we were watching. And they were kicking the ball. The dad was kicking the ball to the kids. And the kids would kick the ball back to dad. And the little kid, I don't know how he did this. It's a feat of athleticism that can barely be achieved. Managed to kick the ball right into his own face. You need some nimbleness to be able to do that. And I felt bad because I laughed when I saw it. And the ball went right off the face, and it went there. And I caught my laughter, of course, immediately, because it wasn't funny, and I would make sure the kid's okay. Now, it was interesting to see the family dynamic. There's just the three, right? The dad and the two sons. And the other brother was like, "You okay?" And the dad was like, "Wow, or how you doing?" Now, the boy with his father and his brother there was a little hesitant. You know how little kids sometimes have to make up their mind. They're weighing the atmosphere, reading the air. How should they respond? And now the two male figures there were like, you're okay, you're suck it up. And then they were kicking the ball back and forth, and the little kid still wasn't sure. And suddenly he started to get emotional, and his older brother, went over and held him. That was touching to me. I was like, oh, that's nice. Now the dad's loitered over there, the dad was staying over there seeing if this was going to sort itself out. Finally, the little boy broke down. He'd had enough. This was too much. And he dashed over. I hadn't seen it, but the mother was squatting under a tree over there. He ran over, jumped into his mother's arms, and the mother sat down on the grass. And he wrapped the little boy wrapped him around it and buried his face in his mom's bosom, and she held him and patted his back. And to me, that was like, I was like, oh, there's the family dynamic, right? I mean, the whole thing come together, and the father and the son went back to playing back and forth. You know, mom was doing her thing, dad was doing his thing, big brother was doing his thing, all of that. And that was one of those moments, it not necessarily related to this, but it was just one of those moments where I was like, you know, as hard as it is being a family man, it really does yield good results, because we need more human beings in the world if we're going to continue as a species. And it takes the commitment to develop a family, to have a career, to see the thing through the hard parts when it's not good, to behave the way that we need to abide the community and the expectations of the family. It takes all of that. So that's why it says, principle of family, sub-principle, catalyst, because it catalyzes us to do better. Continuing, without this connection, I'm going to read that first sentence, that sentence again. Without this connection and circumstance, we can still live a rich and meaningful life. We can do it. Without family, we can have a great life. But I would say, though, that in the measure, having been on the other side now, people keep asking me, and they keep saying, Kurt, are you going to go off and explore in the wilderness and stuff like that? And I'm going, no, probably not. I know what's out there. It's empty compared to this other thing. There's greater. I would rather be here in my home with my wife mostly. Just once in a while, maybe once a week, go out into the wilderness, because it's richer, deeper, more meaningful. You get the idea. Without this connection and circumstance, we can still live a rich and meaningful life, though the way may be harder at times as we strive with less mandate, catalyst perhaps, to compel us through thick and thin, less necessity to push us out the door to our jobs on days when we'd rather not, and through many years and decades of hard work, sacrifice, and giving. The very selfless endeavors which yield virtue from the dawning chaos of our lives, rising and falling and one day utterly failing. That's the whole freaking gosh damn 40 years of my life right there. And if, once dead, we've left behind the fact and echo of our virtuous living within the family, in quotation marks, the fact within the family we formed and supported and maintained, then our life will hardly have been lived in vain, and if anything, everything is eventually, then our life will hardly have been lived in vain, even if everything is eventually one day in vain. That's why, probably, yesterday, I sat there ready to die, ready to go out with a single backwards glance, because I did, in fact, fulfill that particular. It's not an objective, but it's a principle. All right, I've covered a lot of grounds. The last thing I need to do now is talk about what I'm going to do today. Now, as a retired man, I only give myself one thing to do every day. That's it, just one thing. The rest is gravy. And the one thing, I had a sale yesterday in the store, so I'm going to ship that item to the buyer. And it's a beautiful sake cup that they bought. Real treasure. I really like that one. I'll ship that out, and then otherwise I'll see how the day unfolds. I do need to work on my driver's license. That was the next thing in order after we got the house remodeling complete, was to get my Japanese driver's license reinstated. Maybe I'll work on that today as well. See what the comments are. Super MR30, greetings from Norway. Hey, Sorara, sorry. Good morning from Maine. Hey, Maine, we got Norway represented. Maine's there. Hello, Sam. Good morning. Penguin 651 says, morning. Started to notice aging once I hit 60, bizarrely. I try and walk 5 to 6 miles each morning, but if I miss a day, I really notice it. You would think it would be the other way around. Tim. Isn't it interesting how it hit all of a sudden? For me, it was 57. Tim, it would be interesting to hear a couple of old guys talking. How is it with you with your muscle tone? I mean, my muscle tone, if I can do as many push-ups as I want, I can lift as many rocks as I want, I'm not getting it back. As recently as 10 years ago, if I went out and did some push-ups and some lifting, my muscle tone would come back. But it's going downhill. Interesting to hear. Thanks for the sharing about your own experience, Tim. And you said when you hit 60, so I wonder how old you are now and how it's progressing. Well, you don't have to tell me how old you are if you don't want to, but just curious. What's the road ahead look like, Tim? Penguin says, started taking nicotinamide. I can't even read that. I don't know. Let's call it NMT. The past 2 months, the body starts to lose this chemical as you age, and I'm noticing an improvement in energy levels, less tired, etc. Oh, that's Tim. Okay, I'm going to try to take a snapshot. Let's see if this can work. I want to look that up. So I'm going to try to take a snap. Hopefully this won't kill the feed. Snapshot. Hey, it worked. Good. So thank you, Tim. I'm going to save that photo so that I can look that up. Mr. Safety Forever. Hi there. Good morning. Less tired. Got it. And Elvina. Good morning, Kurt and friends. Good morning to you. Well, today was a long one. Had a lot to discuss. Yesterday's incident, seeming near brush with mortality. But aren't we brushing by mortality every day? We just don't notice it, right? It's as indistinct as sometimes as the passing of time itself. Thanks for joining me today. I hope everybody achieves their whatever they set out to do today, and I wish you all the best. Be safe, but not too safe. Bye-bye.